Habiéndose indicado por Secretaría que existe el quórum reglamentario, declaramos abierta esta sesión extraordinaria del Consejo Permanente convocada para recibir a la excelentísima señora Diane Ablonczy, Ministra de Estado para Asuntos Exteriores para América y Asuntos Consulares de Canadá. Señora Ministra, en mi carácter de presidente del Consejo Permanente de la Organización de Estados Americanos, me complace recibirla en esta Casa de las Américas y ofrecerle una muy cordial bienvenida a esta sesión. Con gusto la recibimos y saludamos también a la distinguida comitiva que le acompaña. Sean todos ustedes bienvenidos. Tengo ahora el gusto de invitar al señor Secretario General José Miguel Insulza, quien pronunciará las palabras iniciales de esta sesión.
Muchas gracias, Presidente. Thank you, Mr. President. It is with great honor that we welcome today the Minister of State of Foreign Affairs of Canada, Ms. Diane Ablonczy. Since the early 90s, as we all know, Canadian relations with Latin America have become increasingly stronger. Canada's acceptance into the OAS in 1990 marked the strengthening of that interaction as a whole. Along with the political and economic benefits of that union came greater support for democratic ideals and free trade discussions, as well as other social cultural concerns. 5 years ago, I had the honor to subscribe with Canada an arrangement to enhance their cooperation as a key piece of Canada's strategy for engagement in the Americas. This initiative has been undeniably enhanced the role of the OAS as a multilateral institution in the Americas and as one of the major forums for development cooperation. We have worked very closely to advance our common agenda on democracy, security, and prosperity. The uniqueness of Canada's engagement with the OAS resides in the fact that few donors like her have allowed to include programs that enhance the modernization goals of the OAS. The cooperation we receive is results-based, not exclusively by activity, and this in turn has enabled us to forge a comprehensive vision of our institution and provides us with an overview to see where we want to see the OAS over a period of time. Canada's commitment to the OAS has led to a stronger democratic practice in the region. It has served to extend the development agenda in the hemisphere, as well as to enhance the efficiency, effectiveness, and accountability in the overall process of the OAS. In very concrete ways, Canada has shown its commitment to a more prosperous hemisphere by facilitating assistance to member states as they strive to grow their economies and provide new opportunities for their citizens. In the case of the current OAS CEDA cooperation plan, it has provided funding required by a General Secretariat to work with countries, helping them strengthen their capacity to design and adopt public policies, legal frameworks, and programs to promote competitiveness, productivity, innovation, as well as the growth of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, especially those owned by women, and their access to national, regional, and global markets. By concentrating our efforts on socioeconomic issues, we are inherently trying to enhance and facilitate the political institutional stability of the region. This shows the importance of cooperation as an instrument for democratic and institutional strengthening, objectives that are also shared by all of us. We are also grateful for the support that Canada has permanently given to our activities in terms of special missions, in case of crisis and in case of problems around the region, the support for electoral missions that we have been carrying out every time in a more frequent manner across the hemisphere. Our support for the Commission and the activities of the Commission on Human Rights, and in general, the support for the political dialogue in the hemisphere. It shows that there is a strong possibility to build a program with a country that balances the whole issues, all the areas of organization, security, political and democratic conflict resolution, development, and the human rights, and in a full program that we have very much benefit from. Canada was, when Canada first engaged our organization in our General Assembly in 1989, then former Secretary of State for External Affairs, Joe Clark, said, I quote, Canada's joining of the OAS represents not so much a decision to become a member of an organization as it does a decision to become a partner in this hemisphere. For too long, Canadians have seen this hemisphere as our house. It is now time to make it our home. I welcome you therefore at home, at your home, the home of the Americas, the House of the Americas, and I am very grateful for the support that you have given us across the years. So it's with a great pleasure that I welcome you, Minister Diane Ablonczy. Bienvenida a la Casa de las Américas.
Muchas gracias, señor Secretario General. Señora Ministra, como acaba de observar el señor Secretario General, las iniciativas canadienses en las Américas son conocidas, así como el compromiso del gobierno de su país con los objetivos compartidos por el hemisferio y los propósitos y funciones de la Organización de Estados Americanos. El apoyo de su país a la OEA y sus miembros es asimismo muy apreciado por los miembros de este Consejo Permanente. Honorable señora Ablonczy, los ideales que usted persigue y los logros que ha alcanzado en su carrera al servicio de los ciudadanos de su país son notables y por ello su presencia en este foro nos complace mucho y nos honra. Al recibirla hoy en esta sesión, deseamos saludar cálidamente al noble y leal pueblo canadiense con el que nos unen lazos de cooperación que cada día se fortalece y vigorizan más. Con gusto le ofrecemos ahora el uso de la palabra.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary General, for that introduction. Canada is indeed a very good friend of the Organization of American States, and very appreciative, Secretary General, of your leadership and of the hard work of all of you here. It's a pleasure to be here. Many of you we know well, and it's good to see you again. And it's good also to get acquainted with some of you who are newer members of this organization. And we look forward to working with you very much. And so, Excellencies, members of the Secretariat, distinguished guests, colleagues, members of the Canadian delegation that are here to cheer me on. And, you know, they want to make sure I'm not too nervous talking to all of you high-level ambassadors. Colleagues, it's a real honor for me, and I sincerely thank you for allowing me this time to speak to you, to give you some of Canada's messages and priorities and some of the observations we have about the work of the OAS. It was very kind of you to allow me to take some of your valuable time, and I sincerely appreciate it. It's no secret, colleagues, that for Canada, the Organization of American States is a key, a central, an indispensable venue for cooperation with our hemispheric partners. As you know, there are other multilateral organizations in this hemisphere, but the only one of which Canada has the privilege to be a part is this one, the OAS. And so we value it very much for that reason alone, but for other reasons as well. We have a number of shared goals, and I want to talk about those. You're aware, of course, and the Secretary General and I were just at a high-level economic forum in West Palm Beach. It was very hard to drag us to West Palm Beach, But we were brave, and we went there where it was warm and the palm trees were waving in the breeze. And there was a very good economic forum. But it brought home to us yet again that the global community is not yet fully out from under the shadow of the financial crisis that struck in 2008. And we also know that our peoples are considering different visions for the future of our hemisphere. And that's not surprising. People don't always think alike. In fact, if you're married, you know that very well. But we believe, because of some of these uncertainties and this instability that we've experienced, that there's never been a greater need for a strong, for a purposeful, and for a well-supported OAS. We also see that the face of the world is changing. In the aftermath of the global recession, traditional economic powers are struggling to regain their market share. At the same time, it's exciting that new and emerging economies, including many in our own region here, and Mr. Chairman, your country is a shining example of that, are experiencing the bulk of the growth in the global economy. So it is our opinion, colleagues, that nowhere is this rise of economic power more impressive than right here in the Americas. It's clear that the Americas are truly coming into their own, both economically but also politically. And I know that many of you feel that's long overdue, and it's a very exciting new dynamic on the globe. So recognizing both the economic and the geopolitical importance of the Americas, our Prime Minister Harper, made it a foreign policy priority for Canada in 2007, not too long after we took government, to really focus a lot of our time and attention on this, our own neighborhood. The Americas is our region. We live here. We have many friends here, and this is where we want to put our focus. Canada's engagement in the Americas then has brought our government together to work with partners like you in the region to advance shared objectives, and we had 3 goals that we are working to further, to put forward. The first goal is to boost mutual economic opportunity. And we do this largely by breaking down trade barriers. Our second goal is to strengthen security and institutions. Really, we want to have safer streets in all of our countries. This is a fundamental requirement for each and every citizen, is to be safe where they live, where they walk. And our third goal is to foster lasting relationships by building stronger people-to-people ties. You know the old saying, colleagues, at least it's an old saying in English, it's not what you know, but who you know. You've heard that, haven't you? And it's so true that we want to work with people that we know and that we have a connection with and that we have grown to trust. It's extremely important. And so that is our third goal. Now, these 3 goals are supported by our commitment to democratic values, including respect for human rights. And as you know, Canada is committed to these, deeply committed to these, and that has led maybe for some heated debate from time to time, but we do not back down in any way, shape, or form from our deep belief in the right of people to enjoy democracy and basic human rights. Now, first of all, Canada is convinced that economic growth and opportunity hinges on democracy and security. In other words, you're not going to have one of those without the other, without the others. They're just tremendously interconnected. And so, colleagues, we consider and we've seen the OAS as being a strong and steadfast partner in achieving those results, in achieving economic growth, but also supported by growing democracy and security. That is why, since 2007, Canada has increased our focus, deepened our engagement, and invested time, effort, and funds in our own region, the Americas region. We do this through official development assistance, through multilateral contributions, particularly to this body, and through security-focused programming. We've been working very, very hard to create economic opportunities, to bolster security in institutions, and to foster lasting relationships that will benefit all of us. And we've had some great successes to date. And I want to talk a little bit first about the economic agenda. In terms of the economy, we're very fortunate that together, many of us here, many of our countries represented here, have built strong networks of free trade agreements and other investment and trade links right across the region. We strongly believe that sustainable investment, that is investment that's happy where it is, that's not, you know, on the verge of picking up their marbles and going home, so to speak, and sustainable trade are creating, where they're strong, jobs and income. And colleagues, isn't that the best way to improve people's lives? Is with jobs, with good incomes, not government programs or government handouts or anything more than just having something to do that brings in an income and allows you the dignity of earning a living and supporting families and communities. So we think that is just absolutely key. And in Canada, we've had a lot of experience in increasing trade and commercial economic ties. We've been at it for a while now, and we really have seen that this is the best way to increase prosperity and growth. It started, of course, with the North American Free Trade Agreement back in the 80s. And there was a huge debate about that, colleagues. I was pretty young then, but I remember some of it. And, you know, there were accusations that Canada was going to sell out their culture to the big bad US, that we were going to lose our sovereignty over our water and other resources, that our Canadian health care was going to be completely destroyed. Of course, none of that happened. Canada and the US have both benefited enormously from the NAFTA, and of course now Mexico is the third amigo in that particular trade agreement, and also the benefits are very clear. And so, using the NAFTA as a guidepost, Canada is today working hard to further increase two-way trade and investment with our regional partners. And we've been met with a very warm welcome by many of our friends, including your country, Mr. Chairman, where a free trade agreement between Canada and Panama just came into effect on April 1st. And we're very pleased about that. In fact, in the past 6 years, Canada has concluded, signed, or brought into force more free trade agreements with Latin America and the Caribbean than with the rest of the world combined. We put our efforts right here at home in our own neighborhood, and we're very pleased with the response we've had. You know, I mentioned, Mr. Chairman, your country. Panama is just a great example of a high-growth emerging market. Canada's two-way merchandise trade in 2011 was over $250 million, which is pretty good for two fairly small economies. And that was even more awesome was that it was an increase of 105% over the past 5 years. So that's just a tremendous, tremendous growth. But what it really means is that there's more jobs for our people. There are more goods and services. There are more need for all kinds of employment, and that's good for our economies and for our communities. I mean, this Panama I mentioned just as one example of a hemisphere that is undergoing incredible change. I was talking to somebody that actually owns property in Panama, bought property there many years ago, and she said when she goes back to Panama now, she doesn't even recognize it. It's completely different than it was a couple of decades ago. And this is because economic development really does provide infrastructure and growth to any economy. From a broader regional perspective, we know that Latin America has become, as I said before, an economically dynamic region that is experiencing significant economic growth. And analysts say that there will be continued growth. You know, as some of us, when our countries are growing, I know this happened in our country, you think it's always going to be that way. And then when the growth stops, when there's a recession, when there's difficulties, sometimes because of government decisions, you can't believe that things are changing. But it's good to know that there's a great potential in our own hemisphere for continued growth. And so there's some, I guess you could say, tectonic shifts. It was interesting, I was in Chile, Secretary General, a few weeks ago in February. I know that's your country. And I learned, I was at the Emergency Response Center, I learned that Chile has 500 earthquakes a day, every day. Most of them, of course, are too small to make a difference. But, you know, there's an equally interesting tectonic shift going on across the global economy, and particularly in this region. And so harnessing those shifts, these opportunities for the benefit of our people, opening markets, making way for greater mutual prosperity, really is something that I think we, as a multilateral, cooperative group, can really play a stronger role in. For Canada's part, for example, our overall trade with the region, since we made the Americas our focus, has increased by over 30%, 32.1 if you want the exact number. And we have now 2,500 Canadian companies active in the Americas, which is another great growth. I don't know if you know this, but Canadian companies are pretty timid, really. They're quite risk averse, many of them. And so for 2,500 now to be active throughout the Americas is quite an advance, quite a bit of progress for our own business community. In addition, because resource development is a great opportunity in the Americas, you'll be interested to know that 60% of all mining investment in the region comes from Canada. I just want to talk to you about that for a minute. You know, people think of mining investment coming from the deep pockets of rich gold mining companies, and, you know, they just kind of pull it out of their vault and invest it in different countries. But the way most mining companies, if not all, get their money is by investment from little people. People who buy shares on the stock exchange in these companies. Might just be a few shares. They might have some shares from their mutual funds. They might have shares from their retirement savings accounts. pension funds are often invested in these mining projects. And of course, pensions are people like auto workers and blue-collar workers and teachers and nurses. These funds come from the pockets of ordinary, hardworking, very modest income people from Canada. And so the fact that these funds entrusted to companies by our own regular citizens are being invested in throughout our own neighborhood, I think is a real testament to our commitment to our neighbors and to partnering with our neighbors in developing these important resources. Of course, from a broader regional perspective, new relationships have developed in recent years. I've been very pleased to be able to visit most of your countries, and will continue to do that. And it's been a real privilege to do that, to meet with many of your ministers and your presidents and prime ministers, and many of your leading business and civil society people. And we believe that as we will continue to work together, we're going to be able to respond to the region's growing economic dynamism for the benefit of all our people. You know, and this, we talk about economic benefit, but I just want to point out that economic benefit really means greater equality. This is a region, and Canada has its own struggles in this regard, where not everybody in our societies share the benefit of the opportunities and the growth and the income increase that we've experienced through economic development, greater trade. And we really need to put a focus on bringing everyone along to a greater quality of life and standard of living through the economic opportunities that we're developing together. You know, it's good that it benefits some people, but the more people it benefits, the stronger our societies are going to be. Left behind people are wasted potential, wasted ability, wasted talent. And so Canada wants to work with all of our neighbors to more and more bring all of our citizens into the mainstream of economic activity. Canada is very pleased to recently become an observer with the Pacific Alliance. We're quite excited about this new trading arrangement. It's really showing leadership in the region. The Alliance is promoting good governments and open markets. And the member nations are making great efforts to take down trade barriers between them and between those that may be joining the Alliance in future. And of course, they have a goal of reaching out to Asia. And so here we have the Americas beginning to pool its influence and its credibility and its potential to channel opportunities in the Pacific Rim. I have to say, though, colleagues, that the OAS has not been fully engaged in supporting these kind of economic initiatives. And I know to some degree it's because you've been asked to do so much. You know, you can't attend to 1,000 priorities. At the same time, Canada really urges you as our friends and neighbors to focus more on this issue. Canada believes that as the premier political forum in this hemisphere, the time has come for the OAS to take a more substantial role in building an environment that will support investment, that will translate investment into growth. As you know, OAS member states have been mandated by leaders to collaborate for the achievement of economic growth. And we believe that the OAS should lead these efforts by playing the important role that only a multilateral political body can play. We believe that the OAS needs to play that proactive role together with partners at the Inter-American Development Bank, the Economic Commission for Latin America, the Caribbean, the OAS member states, by really working to create a stable environment for economic growth. The OAS has a great deal to offer in this regard, and I believe we'll be able to add incredible value to those efforts. Turning now for just a few minutes to democracy and security. That's the second objective, as I mentioned, for Canada in the Americas, to strengthen security and democratic institutions. As a country of the New World and a member of La Gran Familia de las Americas, you can tell my Spanish is still a work in progress, Canada is steadfastly devoted to the democratic values that our countries have endorsed together, as I mentioned earlier. We see the adoption of the Democratic Charter as a shining statement, unique in the world, colleagues, of the shared commitment of the countries of the hemisphere to pursue, to support, and to advance democracy, human rights, the rule of law, and accountability of public institutions to the people of the Americas. No stronger statement of commitment to the principles of democracy exists anywhere in the world. Canada shares your pride in this achievement, no small thing that this was entered into. The OAS's ability to support and advance democracy in the hemisphere has really been one of your greatest strengths, Secretary General. The stability this has brought to the hemisphere, the support that you have provided to struggling democracies, to governments in transition, to the development of institutions of government, all of these have set the terms by which countries of the hemisphere have been building independent, innovative, and dynamic societies. And as you know, Canada is solidly committed to partnering with you in these efforts. Canada has supported fair and transparent elections in 17 countries of the region. We've contributed to 47 electoral observation missions of the OAS between 2009 and 2011 alone. And of course, we'll be supporting the upcoming OAS observer mission to Paraguay later this month. But beyond sound institutions, we know that successful societies also, as I mentioned before, require peace and stability, safety on the ground, safety in your streets, safety in communities. And so the threat to that is organized criminal networks. This includes networks engaged in illicit drug trade, but also related violent crimes, arms smuggling, people smuggling, fraudulent document, trading in fraudulent documents. This is, and by the way, criminal mining. A lot of these organizations take literally billions of dollars out of some of your countries in illegal gold and silver and other resources. This is a terrible, terrible rip-off, abuse of the potential and the resources of your countries, all of our countries and our peoples. So not only do they engage in this kind of robbery and theft, but they undermine security and good governance. They make it difficult to maintain an environment where trade and investment can flourish, and where our kids have options other than to join gangs and to get involved in activities that undermine their future rather than build it. So that's why Canada has increased our efforts to combat transnational organized crime and to strengthen governance in Latin America and the Caribbean, to support our partners' efforts there to strengthen freedom, democracy, human rights, and rule of law. we placed a special emphasis on working in partnership with local governments, whether through military, law enforcement, or civilian projects, to improve security in Central America, the Caribbean, and Mexico, a key transit region for drug trafficking northward and then over to Europe. In Colombia, for example, I just want to give you a couple of examples. Canada has actively supported the country's quest for peace and security. We provided more than $32 million since 2006 to support victims' rights, to improve justice, and to clear landmines. We've been a lead donor to the OAS mission to support the peace process, and that mission, by the way, colleagues, has really played a pivotal role in the disarmament of the paramilitary groups and continues to provide critical assistance to the government of Colombia as they reintegrate former combatants and tackle land restitution reforms. So security is improving. This is creating an environment where individuals and businesses are better able to prosper and grow. And what we've done, colleagues, is something new. We took this idea from the Inter-American Development Bank last year in Montevideo, where they gave a presentation on what they called Map Americas, where they put all of their projects on a virtual map. And Canada now is doing the same thing. We're calling it Panorama Americas, because we didn't want to just steal the IDB's idea or name, but we're putting this on a virtual map, and so that you can go to a website called americas.gc.ca and click on to your country or region and see where Canada's projects are. We've just now done Central America, and we're gradually going to be rolling out other regions of Latin America and the Caribbean, little by little over the next year or two. You know, nothing ever happens quickly, does it? But we've got a good start, so that's great. And colleagues, we want to do this because it will help us not only to better coordinate our efforts, so we know where our projects are and what they are, so that we're building on our projects instead of just doing some scattered efforts. But we also want to better inform Canadian citizens, because they're paying to support their friends and neighbors throughout the hemisphere, and we believe they need to see, too, what's happening there. So this brings me to another theme that I want to emphasize with you this morning, and that is of institutional strengthening. You know, there's been a lot of talk, and the Secretary General and I spoke again this morning about the OAS here, the fact that this institution suffers from chronic challenges, long-term challenges, and the need to find a path to long-term stability. The world critically needs multilateral institutions that have this kind of stability. And so we believe that we need to continue to take a hard look at the objectives of this organization and the structure we've relied on so far, and that by modernizing and reforming as events change and as shifts take place, that we'll be able to make this organization more credible, and that it will have more impact and achieve better results throughout the hemisphere. Now, you've no doubt seen for yourselves at the OAS, because you've been working here with our good ambassador, Ambassador Cullum, and his team, that your Canadian colleagues have really been working together with you to promote budget reform and to modernize the organization. We know that a lot of tasks have been heaped upon this organization, and that now some hard choices are going to have to be made as to what will be the real role of the OAS in the hemisphere. Unnecessary mandates have to be weeded out. There's some mandates that are redundant. You know, they kind of do the same thing. And of course, some mandates are obsolete. So we just have to roll up our sleeves and just weed out some of these roles that have been accumulating over the past few decades, examine them closely and eliminate those that we need to eliminate. So that, you know, it's kind of like when you go into your office and your desk is piled high. Has that ever happened to you? Yeah, it's happened to me. You just have all these stacks of paper, not just on your desk, but on the chairs and on the floors and on the credenza, and you don't even know where to start. You know, you play video games because it doesn't seem like even 15 minutes is going to make any difference. And that's why this decluttering and this weeding out and this, you know, set down the to-do list and a clear path forward it's important at a personal level, and it's important at an organizational level. Now, as you know, your Secretary General has initiated a strategic vision exercise. And we really support you, Secretary General, in that. We think that you've created an opportunity for frank exchange on priorities and objectives of member states, and that this is really going to help to establish a more effective secretariat. Of course, as part of this strategic vision, we see a role for many of this body's most successful activities, like election observation missions, human rights, security efforts to contain transnational organized crime, and excellence in public sector management. We also see a role for the Inter-American Defense Board as part of a vibrant defense and emergency response community in the hemisphere. And by the way, colleagues, just speaking of the Inter-American Defense Board, is Lieutenant General Thibault here?
Yes.
Where are you, General? Well, oh, up on the raised podium. I want to, General, just take this opportunity to personally thank you for your leadership as the chair of the board for the past 2 years. You have really been outstanding. We've been very proud of you, and thank you for what you've done. Colleagues, I think you're all aware that the General now will be second in command to Canada's military as soon as he has completed his term in office with the Defense Board, and he's going to be a real asset to Canada. So thank you. Colleagues, would you join me just in thanking the General? Yeah, we were going to have a second in command of the Canadian Forces that has a great experience and insight with all of you and into this hemisphere. And so that's going to be a real plus. Canada believes that there's been considerable progress in the Inter-American Defense Board, and we look forward to seeing that progress continue under the new chair. Canada will continue to participate with you as an equal partner in this important process that I've just been talking about with OAS reform. It goes without saying. And it's really our hope that the process will lead to the renewal of the organization that will deliver on the democratic, security, and prosperity needs of the hemisphere. And I just want to spend a couple of minutes on fostering lasting relationships. That's the most fun thing. Don't you meet wonderful people in this job? Now, there's some that you don't think are wonderful every single day. But when you think about the talent and the ability and the commitment of your colleagues that you work with and all of your teams from the various countries, we're really blessed to have the kind of talent and the type of commitment that we see surrounding each of us here in this forum. We really make fostering genuine relationships, strong relationships, lasting relationships as the core of our engagement in the Americas. And in fact, we know that these relationships are the backbone that supports every one of our projects, our partnerships with our different neighbors in the hemisphere that support our goals, that support achievements in the region. And I think part of that is because people don't always agree. I've been shocked and surprised to know that Canada sometimes disagrees with other countries. You know, it's, when you have a relationship, you can agree to disagree without being disagreeable. And because there's enough goodwill there, you can come to some kind of a consensus, some kind of resolution, because you want to. You want to have and enjoy good relationships. And so I really believe that nurturing, sustaining relationships across borders is the mortar, the cement that allows mutual understanding and cooperation to be built in our hemisphere. We build these friendships through honest, open communications and respect for each other and attempt to understand each other better. Breaking down barriers of mistrust. Sometimes we just don't understand where each other's coming from, and by talking we can iron that out. And so that's so important to build a better Americas for all our people. America's ties grow every day. I'm not exaggerating about that, because over 4 million of us travel each year to the region for tourism or business or study, or sometimes to live part of the year. And when you think about it, 4 million people is a lot, because Canada's population is only about 33 million. So it's a significant amount of travel. We also have a vibrant Latin American and Caribbean diaspora in Canada. Just about 1 million of our people are from the rest of the hemisphere, and that's growing rapidly. So these people maintain links to their homelands, and they're an important bridge between the nations of the hemisphere. We're also strengthening people-to-people links between Canada and the Americas through education, art, culture, and sport. And in that regard, you probably remember well that our mission here was able to arrange a presentation to you just last month by organizers of the 2015 Pan American and Pan American Games, which will take place in Toronto, Canada very soon. This is going to bring 250,000 participants and visitors to Canada. So it's another opportunity to build and strengthen ties between our country and the countries that you all represent across all sectors of society. And of course, these games also give you, each of you, a unique opportunity to raise the profile of your countries among Canadians. Canadians take about 59 million trips outside the country just in 2011, and so we think this is going to be an important window for all of you to appeal to our adventurous spirit and also our love of warmer winter climates. So in conclusion, just allow me to reiterate how proud Canada is to be a proud member of the OAS and La Gran Familia de las Americas. But as all of us who are part of families understand, those relationships aren't always easy. Families grow and they thrive when they face issues that divide them with tolerance and with restraint, and spend as much time as possible expanding those areas where they see positive and productive outcomes, focusing on themes that bring the family together, not divide it, and to which they return for refueling and rejuvenation. The OAS is a dynamic gathering place of a very large and diverse family. Every opportunity for discord is matched by a dozen chances for harmony. Regional groupings and member states need to work constructively together. There is more that unites us than drives us apart. But sometimes we seem to return to the same past arguments over and over again. This just isn't either productive or healthy. Canada looks forward to every one of our gatherings, the summits, the general assemblies, the special general assemblies, with optimism and enthusiasm, knowing that together we have a lot to gain. But if we are divided, we have a lot to lose. In 2 months, we'll come together in Antigua, Guatemala, to focus on the impact of the illicit drug trade and associated violence, corruption, and impunity on the Americas, one of the most serious threats faced by the region. It's Canada's hope that we will use this meeting, colleagues, to identify opportunities for collaboration, advance where there's agreement, set a positive agenda for progress on reducing the impact of the drug trade on the lives of citizens of the hemisphere. Of course, there are areas where we'll disagree. As the largest democratic region in the world, every one of us recognizes and also respects the rich diversity of opinion that we will encounter. And we believe that this is one of our strengths, although it, of course, may not always feel like it. But Canada will work with Guatemala, as we will with every member state, to ensure that this upcoming assembly is a success. We're confident that Guatemala will put on an event worthy of the best, the most positive and constructive engagement from every delegation that participates. So we'll work with you all to move forward as a region to the next Summit of the Americas, also hosted in Panama, Mr. Chairman. This process has resulted in some of the most important initiatives this hemisphere has preserved collectively, as I've already outlined. So with a collective commitment to succeed, we look forward to great things to come. We understand the challenges we face, but we embrace them openly, respectfully, and with determination. Canada is, colleagues, and will remain your willing partner in the ongoing evolution of the Americas. We look forward to working with you to build a brighter future for our hemisphere. And thank you very much for your kind time.
Honorable señora, en nombre de todos los miembros de este Consejo Permanente de la Organización de Estados Americanos, al igual que de los observadores, queremos darle las gracias por las reflexiones que usted ha compartido con nosotros esta mañana sobre la relación de Canadá con la OEA, así como sobre el crecimiento económico y el fortalecimiento de las relaciones en todo el hemisferio. De manera particular, quiero comunicarle que valoramos las referencias positivas que usted ha vertido en cuanto al desarrollo económico que está alcanzando nuestro país. Su ilustrada presentación y los conceptos vertidos quedarán registrados en el acta de esta sesión y en nuestras conciencias. Muchas gracias. Ahora solicitamos a los distinguidos representantes que permanezcan en sus asientos mientras Su Excelencia, la señora Ministra Diane Ablonczy y su comitiva se retiran de esta sala. Señores representantes y honorables invitados, se levanta esta sesión del Consejo Permanente y les ruego me acompañen para dar inicio inmediatamente a la siguiente sesión. Muchas gracias. Se levanta la sesión.